Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Well, as you saw in my last video, I was actually out spot spraying soybeans yesterday. And now I'm back to working on the final drive. I actually only have 2 fields of soybeans left, and that would be about 160 acres of no-till beans. And I actually want to give those a few days, and so it'll probably be either Friday or Saturday when I spray them. And so yesterday, sure enough, this past Sunday, my mom and dad went to see some friends of theirs in Cincinnati, Ohio. And thankfully, yesterday morning, the dealership over at Kokomo, Indiana, called me and said that they had my part in. So right there it is, which worked out perfect because when my mom and dad were heading back home from Ohio yesterday, they were able to simply, well, the way they go, it takes them, probably about 3 miles from the Agco dealership, which worked out perfect. Come on. There we go. And so they were able to simply just stop by there and pick up the bearing. I mean, not the bearing, that spacer on their way home, and that worked pretty good. So I got the spacer in. Next thing I'm ready for is the bearing, and I actually have that inside the house here at the farm in the oven baking. And so I've had it in there now for a little over an hour, and I'm going to bring it up to 400 degrees. Thankfully, this here's cool, which is good. And so, right quick here, let me show you what else we got. Okay, here's this piece. Right there's some shims. Let's see here, how many are there? Looks like at least 2, 3, 4. Some are thicker, some are literally paper thin, like an onion skin. And there's at least, looks like 3 more. Maybe there's 4 altogether. Okay, there's another one. And when I get ready to put this bearing in, okay, right there's 2 more. Like I say, you can see how paper thin they are. In fact, actually, I'm kind of surprised. Usually, there will be one that will be even thinner than that. Like I say, it'll be about like an onion skin. But when I get ready to put the bearing in, I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to video that. Probably not, because what I'll do is I'll go in the house, get the bearing, come running back out here, put it on, and then get these shims and then this retainer ring on the back of it. And so that's how it's going to sit. And of course, with the bearing right down here underneath that around the end of the axle. But those shims are what allow you to adjust your preload on the bearing. And so, but like I say, trying to work with a 400-degree bearing, you don't exactly just poke around. So trying to video that, probably pretty near impossible. But you see how it goes, and I'll see if I can show you here on this one right here how I set the preload. These are actually metric bolts, but a 3/4 socket lines right up to it also. Oh boy. I had actually kind of put some pressure on these after, well, I think I showed you in well, what would have been part 9, if I remember right, when I sealed this all up with silicone, how I had already torqued all these bolts down. All except for these 2 here. Well, 4. These 2 here go clear through into the bottom housing. These 2 here are just up here in this surface part. You know what, let's just speed that up. There we go. Much faster. And what I was noticing before I pull this last one here out, on this drive shaft, you probably can't see that, but I can feel just a little bit of movement up and down, which means there's just a little bit of looseness. And just like what we had to do last year on this also. Come on. Let's go. Gotta get that thing popped out of there. And I've actually already put a new grease seal, oil seal, whatever you want to call it, right there. There's not much wiggle. And so let's see here. There's a whole bunch of shims. Yeah, now see right there's one that like what I was talking about. It's practically like an onion skin. I'm just trying to see here. I don't need much. Okay, right there's, both of those almost feel the same. However, this one here feels like it's just a little bit more floppy. Maybe, maybe not. However, we're only going to go with one at a time. And like I say, that's the same thing that I'll be checking once I get the bearing put in here. And naturally, unlike this here where you can actually kind of wiggle up and down, this here you can't do that. However, what we did last year is when you go to tighten that down, simply turning this and of course rotating that. If it gets down too tight, you'll feel it begin to pinch down, and it's going to rotate a lot harder. Right now it feels pretty good, naturally, because there's no load on it. So let's see what we got here by popping one shim out. It don't sound like much until you get working in that tight of a spec, and it adds up pretty good. Okay, I've got that down. And these 3 bolts right here are what go into the back of that. And I'll take and once I get, well, I'll tighten it down, check preload and that kind of stuff. And then once I get ready to put them in for the final time, I will put on these here, red Loctite, the high strength. Because you sure don't want them things popping out. Although I have had some guys tell me, and I think, from what I've been told, on the S series Gleaner. The S was after they discontinued making the R in 2011, right around 2012. They went from having 3 bolts to 4. But I've had a couple of guys tell me they've actually had these bolts snap, which of course is going to let everything go haywire. Okay, I'm going to go kind of crisscross it from one corner to the other. Oh boy. Come on, there we go. Like I say, that one shim just might be enough. Because I think last year when we put new bearings in, I had it taken, we pulled out one or maybe 2, because it seemed like it had just a little bit more play. Well, I can tell you one thing, that definitely made a difference. Now, naturally, you get just a little bit of wiggle that way because of the way the gears, the teeth, are simply meshing together. And of course, you can hear that. Where this small gear is, the teeth are just knocking back and forth between this gear and that big bowl gear inside. However, as far as the being able to pull it up and down, it's tight. And I think I'm going to leave it there. Like I said, it just has that simple little tiny paper shim. It don't look like much, but I don't know, just a few little teeny tiny thousandths adds up pretty quick. And so, yeah, that's basically, I just wanted to show you that, and that's what I'm going to be doing on that on the inside bearing also, once it gets up to full temperature at 400 degrees. And I'll be adjusting the preload the same way. And then it'll be ready to take and put back over onto the machine, right there on the end of the axle. And so I am going to grab my Loctite. I forgot to get it and bring it over from the other shed, and get these here Loctited in. And for these here, I actually run the blue Loctite, and I actually torque these bolts here down to 50 foot-pounds, and that should be it. So I don't know. As far as trying to get everything all mounted on the machine, I'll just have to see what I can do as far as trying to grab video of that. Let me grab my light here. I am going to, once I get done getting these last 2 bolts here Loctited in, I am going to grab a 5-gallon bucket, and we have a garden hoe down here, and dig all that crud out of that axle. In fact, last year, on the other side, when the left side went out, it actually, of course, when that happened, the back bearing literally, well, all the rollers just chewed out. And, which of course allowed the axle just to go down, and that's why the wheel sat crooked. But when it did that, of course, it got hot fast, and you can actually see where it had scorched. No, back up in there a little ways, scorching out all that old, because that's just old bean dust. Because when the final drive, okay, I think you can see that. When the final drive is mounted on here, there is a gap right here at the bottom that you can actually see up in there, and that's actually how I was able to see it last fall. Was I was able to look up through there, and actually when it went down, it actually kicked the hubcap off the end. And so I could actually see the bottom of the hubcap just laying right here. And so that's how, well, that was one of the ways I knew I had trouble. And of course, when the wheels went kind of crooked, the dual started hitting the ladder. And as soon as that happened, I pretty much knew what it was, because I've seen guys on some of my Gleaner Combine Facebook groups posting pictures, and same thing, final drive went out, or, well, the bearing went out. And you would see pictures of the wheels going from sitting straight to tipping, because that back bearing went out. But yeah, like I say, it's kind of odd how far up in there it kind of just scorched and smoldered all that old bean junk and that kind of crud. Of course, the Combine's a 2002, and so it's 20 years old now. So you get accumulation from all those years. We are third owner on the machine, thankfully. It hasn't gone around through a whole bunch of different hands, because it actually came out of a little town called New Hampton, Iowa, which is straight north of Waterloo. And no, I've told you all before, my dad and I got it back in the winter of 2018. And if I remember, I actually need to look in the operator's manual, because the previous owner had written in the back of it, he had kind of kept like a log of stuff of things that they had done to it. And if I remember right, the second owner had bought it, I think, in 2008, but I'm not positive. And then, of course, the original owner had bought it brand new. And so, like I say, thankfully, it had not gone around through a whole bunch of different people owning it, and that's actually what I like for preference. It means it's been better taken care of, which when I saw it out there, I could see it. But yes, that's just accumulation from the previous two owners, and of course us, all that dust inside that axle tube. And so I'm going to get the old garden hoe and a bucket and dig all that crud out of there. Well, hey, tell you what, I'm going to call that an end of this video, and I'll have to see. In fact, maybe when I get ready to start working on trying to get that final drive mounted on the axle, I can take and throw my head mount on, because with the phone mounted right in between your arms, you got to watch you don't come up and smack the phone or hit or break it or something like that. And so maybe I can take and throw you on my head mount camera holder and see how well that works to try and get this thing mounted back on. And of course, naturally, the old forklift's going to come in handy for that. Well, hey, I'm going to call that into part 10 here, and thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.